I'm going to show you guys how to recover some serious detail in your shadows. Hey guys, welcome to Phlearn. My name's Aaron Nace. You can find me on Twitter at AKNacer. Today we are going to do some awesome tutorial work. We're going to show you guys how to take some detail that you probably didn't think you even had in your shadows and bring it up to some awesome levels. We're also going to be doing some editing, cloning out a shadow. We're working on one of the family's images. This is David Crew's image, and he submitted it to a contest. Everyone really loved it, but they said they didn't quite understand the shadow that was going on in the background, and he wanted to know if we can get rid of it. So we're going to do that for you guys. And you can see it's really not going to take that long, and it's not too incredibly hard. So let's go ahead and get into it. And we got all kinds of announcements, and I'm going to announce them in the episode. How about that? All right. So this is the image that David sent over. This is just straight out of the camera, and it is very cool. Now, a lot of the time in the images when you're editing, when you're photographing, you do really want quite a bit of shadow if you're going for, a darker type of image. But if you decide later on that, like, hey, I'd like a little bit of detail, especially in areas like this, then it's kind of like too late. You can't like put a light back on the guy after. But I will show you guys how to do some lightening this kind of detail really quickly and easily. He also said he wanted to get rid of this knife back here because a lot of people were just like, well, I love the gun, I love the detail over here. I just don't really understand that. So we're going to take care of that as well. So the first thing I want to do is really brighten up these shadows. And it's actually a lot easier than you might think. We're going to create a duplicate of our background layer. So to do that, just hit Command J on your background layer. And then we're going to go up here to Image. I'm going to go down to Adjustments, and we're going to go down to Shadows/Highlights. Now, what it does by default, it probably is going to look like this. I'll just take this away because it's spoiling the awesomeness already. It's like, whoa, it already did it. You didn't even do anything, Aaron. I know. What we're going to do is I'm going to have it show a little bit more options. Now, you have details or options to bring up the details in your shadows as well as your highlights. I would pretty much recommend staying away from your highlights. In my opinion, it never looks good, like ever. So don't mess too much around with this. But the shadows, it always does a great job. So, all right, you've got three sliders here. Your amount slider. And what this is going to do is it's just going to bring up detail in your shadows. And notice it's leaving your highlights alone. It's not really messing with your highlights. It knows where the shadows are and it knows where to clip. So you can really bring up those details in your shadows. Now, tonal width, this is basically like how much clipping it's going to go just to the shadows. So if you want to go to like an HDR type of look, go something here. If you want to get it a little bit more natural, you want to bring this guy up just a bit. I think David wanted to go for a little bit more of the, quote-unquote HDR type of look, so we're going to bring the tonal width down just a little bit. Okay, and then we have our radius, which basically says, like, as you bring your radius up and up, it's going to look more and more natural. Bringing it down, it might look a little bit weird, but if you guys are going for that super stylized look, I would recommend bringing your radius down as well. You can also play around with color correction as well. The reason why this is actually pretty important is because when you photograph something, you have a lot more saturation of color in your highlights than you do in your shadows. Usually shadows are quite a bit less saturated. So if you want to bring up the brightness in your shadows and make them look like they're not shadows, you usually have to bring in color as well, or else they're still going to look like shadows that were brightened instead of actual, something that was actually exposed. In David's original image that he sent over, he made it black and white. So if you guys are planning on going black and white, don't worry about it at all. Or if you're having trouble making your colors look great, black and white is a great option for you as well. So let's go ahead and bring this color correction back up. But this is a good way to do it. And you can see without it, just, right over here, it just looks too grayscale. It just looks really weird. So we're going to go ahead and bring that back up. And there we go. And then midtone contrast, this is just what it says. It's just adding contrast. And this is going to depend completely on what kind of how contrasty you want your image. I'm mostly looking over at our subject here on the left as opposed to what we're going to be doing. Like here on the floor and things like that. It looks horrible. Obviously, I know that, but that's why we created a new layer. So we're going to hit OK, and basically it just applies that. So we went from this to that very quickly and easily, like not much thought at all. The really great thing now is because we put it on its own layer, we can do what? That's right, a layer mask. I knew you were going to say layer mask. We can put a layer mask on this layer and then choose where we want this to be visible and not visible, because I do think that the image works relatively dark. We just want to lighten some areas up. So let's go ahead and make that visible. I'm going to hold down the Option key and click on my layer mask. It's going to make it black. Now what we can do is a number of things. We can just click on something like our magic wand tool. Let's bring up the tolerance a little bit. And I'm going to click on these areas that are, a little bit darker. There we go. And that's going to select out some of the darker area in my image. There we go. And let's hit Command I on the layer mask there. And, oh, you know what? It just selected out way too much. If it selects out too much or too little, you can just try playing with your tolerance here. And that's going to work a little bit better for you. All right. Let's just deselect that a little bit. Bring our tolerance back down a little bit more. And you can shift click on your person a couple times. I'm really not too concerned about it being exactly right. I'm going to use my brush tool anyway, but this is a decent way to select out something dark. Okay, so on the layer mask now, I'm going to hit Command I, and that's just going to fill that with white on my layer mask. So it did a decent job with the face. The arm, it did a horrible job. So we're just going to paint that in with our brush tool. As you're doing something like this, I would recommend using a harder edge brush. So hold down the Control and the Option key, and if you drag up, you're going to make your brush softer. Drag down, you're going to make your brush harder. You can also just right-click and change your hardness. The reason why you want to choose a harder edge brush is because you actually have a hard edge, around the edge of your subject here. So if the brush is too small, you're not going to have a clearly defined edge, and for the most part, it's going to look horrible. So I highly recommend staying away from making your image look horrible. That's, first piece of advice. Make your image look good instead of bad. That's generally good advice. There we go. And we're just going to bring this in. Now, if this were a client image, something that I were going to be delivering and I was getting paid for, I would spend a little bit more time than this on it. But since it's not, this is, just for a tutorial, showing you guys how that works. So we're able to bring that area quite a bit brighter, and now I could just kind of create a nice large soft brush, maybe lower down my flow a little bit. You can do that by hitting Shift 1 on your keyboard, which will make your flow like 10%. Okay, so we can see now we're just kind of getting our layer mask looking a little bit better. Our guy is still, in highlight a little bit better. And we're going to go ahead and paint white on our layer mask over here where our female subject is. Feels so sterile saying female. Where our lady is. Ooh, it's a lady. And I'm just painting white on my layer mask there. Okay, what you don't want to do is just make it look weird. Like if the left side and the right side of her face are the same, you can see it's just going to look a little bit awkward because she's supposed to be lit from one side of this image. Like it doesn't really make sense at all to make her lit from both sides evenly, because that's just not how light works. So keep in mind as you are brightening your shadows and working with your highlights as well, just do it in a way that's not going to look incredibly fake. You don't want your left side, like that's even still a little bit too bright. So let's just paint it invisible there. There we go. So we still have some detail, but it's not going to be like, it's not going to look Photoshoppy. Photoshoppy is a bad thing. All right, and we're just going to paint in this detail here as well. Okay, so we're off to a pretty decent start. We've brought up the detail in our shadow quite a bit. Now, I'm going to go ahead and crop this image. Well, before I do, actually, let's just talk about why I was going to crop. And the reason why is to get rid of some of these distracting elements. Distracting elements like this light post up here, this stairwell over here as well. I don't really find this too distracting, but David wanted it gone, so we're going to get rid of that as well. But that's not going to be a cropping thing, because if we cropped that out, we'd pretty much ruin the picture. So, but we can crop out that top element, crop out a little bit from the left. Let's just bring that down. There we go. And I'll unclick this delete cropped pixels just in case we change our mind later. It's not going to be permanent. There we go. So we're going to crop out that top element, which I don't mind at all. And then this element over here on the right, we can take care of that using a clone stamp technique. Okay, perfect. So we've brightened everything up quite a bit, and it really is looking quite a bit better. Let's go ahead and see what we can do about the shadow. Now, oftentimes in editing something like this, you have a couple things you need to take care of. If you do want to get rid of the shadow, I'm not going to try to get rid of all the shadow. Like, I'm not going to get rid of this and the head and all that. It doesn't really make sense to do it, because we want to get the idea of the hand to go away, but I don't want to spend an hour and a half on this. That doesn't make any sense. So what I'm going to do is get rid of this and then like fill in some darkness over here, and then you won't even be able to tell that there was a person there. So it's just going to change the shadow in a way that's going to make it look, totally normal, really. Okay, and it's really not that hard to do. What we want to do is create a new layer and Shift-Option-Command-N to do that. Shift-Option-Command-E will make it stand visible. And for the most part, using this sort of thing, you can use your patch tool and just patch this area out with a different area. You'll probably have to do it in a few different steps, which I'll show you here. But the patch tool usually works pretty well. So I'm going to try to get the majority of it. And basically all you do is click and make sure you're on source over here and click in your patch tool and then just drag over to, an area that looks pretty good. All right. And there we go. Now you can see here, for instance, I'm unable to line up both of these stripes. And the reason is because you have perspective distortion. In other words, the stripes get farther apart as you get closer to the camera. So let's just try to do like one at a time. I think that's probably a better technique. There we go. Maybe I'll just take care of the blade first. All right, blade first, and I can go straight up with that because it's the same. There we go. And I'll even try that. Right over there. Generally, you want to try to get the entire object that you're going to patch out. If you don't, usually it winds up looking like what we just had, where you just got like a weird, like blotchy area. All right, so usually I don't expect the patch tool to just do a perfect job the first go round. Usually I expect to kind of do this over and over again, but I'm not having to undo really anything. I'm just kind of like, I'm just repatching over and over again, and matching each time. I'm matching and patching. How fun. All right, now we'll just take this area here and match it right over here. There we go. And just a couple more of these. So you can see I'm matching like the stripe on the left as well as, trying to match what's going on here as well. Okay, and if it's too dark or you can't find something really as similar, just try choosing a slightly smaller area. There we go. Okay, and this really is made quite a bit more difficult by the fact that there is the pattern here, back on the wall. But you can see just a couple more, and we're pretty good to go. All right, we are going to darken that down, but you can see for the most part that is gone, which is great. On a new layer, what I'm going to do is this time I'm just going to take my brush tool and I'm going to paint it about 40% here, and simply sample this color and paint down, right over here, and that's just going to darken this area, which is exactly what shadows do, right? So just by sampling this color and kind of painting right over, the area that wasn't in shadow, we're able to kind of blend that in and make it look like, oh, hey, maybe that is in shadow. And again, this sort of thing, especially if you're just grabbing a brush tool and painting over, which I do quite a bit, it's just going to depend on, if you spend 2 seconds on this, it's probably not going to look that great. If you spend 5 minutes on it, it's going to look pretty good. Okay, you could also use the patch tool for this as well. I'm not saying you couldn't use the patch tool. This would just be something, because there's not a whole lot of detail here. Shadows, when something goes into shadow, by the way, it also reduces contrast. So you'll have less contrast in your shadows, which means you can get away with painting with a paintbrush a lot more in your shadows than you can in your highlights. So this is why I'm doing it. But you could also use the patch tool here. I'm just showing you guys a few different ways to do things. There's always more than one way. Okay, there we go. So we can see that doesn't really look like a person trying to stab anyone now. We've just kind of eliminated that, and I'm doing a quick job here. Okay, we can do the same thing basically with our stairwell. Let's grab a new layer. We're doing quite a bit here. It's cool. With our stairwell, I'm going to hold down the Alt or the Option key on my clone stamp tool, and just kind of paint on right down here. Okay, and now any area that you have a serious change in like lightness, in other words, like it's in highlight here and here it's down into shadow. This is also a great place to use your brush tool because you can paint in that transition quite a bit easier than you could use with a clone stamp tool. A clone stamp tool is mostly about copying the exact texture, and then the brush tool you can use to kind of like blend in everything. You could always use the patch tool on over top of your clone stamp tool to match texture after you put the color in there that you wanted. Okay, great. So our stairwell is, for the most part, gone now. Pretty cool. So we're off to a really good start. There's a couple of things that I do want to do to this image, and that is basically bringing back some of that vignette, because I did think it was supposed to be relatively dark, especially over here. That's why I didn't spend a ton of time, painting away those details. It is supposed to be dark in those areas. So we're going to grab a curves adjustment layer, bring it down, and grab our marquee tool, select there in the middle, hit Command I, which is just going to invert the layer mask on there. So you can see that's what we've got. And then just go to Filter, Blur, and then Gaussian Blur, and that's going to give it a bit of a vignette looking. There we go. And then you can just kind of stretch that out. I hit Command T there to do that. Okay, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring the curves adjustment layer, another one, and kind of brighten some of these areas up. And you can either do this manually with a brush tool, or you can just grab a gradient as well. I'm just going to do it manually. I kind of like just painting around because it can give a pattern that doesn't look exactly like, I'll show you in a second here. All right, so that's what I just painted with my brush tool. Sometimes it looks a little bit less Photoshoppy if it's more random like that. It looks like, that might be the way in which light actually falls, rather than have it just be like, oh, there's a perfect circle of light around someone. Usually that doesn't happen. Okay, very, very cool. There's other things that I would do, as far as like coloring and things like that, but let's take it from here. We're going to go into black and white because I know that's what David wanted this image to be. And where is our black and white? There we go. A black and white filter is a great way. And still, if you want to bring up or down the levels of your, your lights and darks, depending on the colors, like there's no blues, not really that many blues anyway in this image, or magentas, but reds and yellows are going to deal with people's skin. So if you want to make people's skin brighter, reds are a great way to do that as well. All right, very cool. And I'm going to just, I don't know. I really liked the red dress actually, so I don't know. I don't know if I would go black and white with this one, because I like the red dress and I like how it plays with the green bottle. So I'm going to try one more thing, and let's just try bringing a levels adjustment here. I'm going to try go to my red channel and kind of push this over so I can get some greens going on. And there we go. Maybe just color, change the color balance of this just a little bit, which is going to help. I think kind of just help out, bring the tonal just a little bit better. All right, and we'll lower that opacity just a bit. Cool, so that's probably something, relatively close to what I would do, but again, and you know what? I'm a big fan of this too. I'm gonna go to my green channel and pull up my darks. No, actually, let's go to our blue. Pull up my darks and put a little bit of yellow in my highlights and a little bit of blue in my shadows. Okay. Almost done with this image. Very cool. And then you can go in here and add all kinds of styling and things like that too. But I think we've got a great image. Let's go ahead and delete our black and white layer. So basically, from the ground up, we have, this is our before, and that's our after. In really not too much time, we went from complete shadow with the sky. We did a crop. We got out a lot more detail here. We added detail to our other subject. We took away the knife, the assailant, and the stairwell as well. So in not a lot of time, we really did change the overall feel of the image. So you can see what you can do in not a whole lot of time in bringing that detail from the shadow. Not only can you make it look like it was more properly exposed, but you can also get some really cool looks like this kind of like gritty look we got here. Guys, thanks so much for watching Phlearn. This is a big episode. I hope you guys liked it a lot and you learned a lot of Photoshop, because that's the whole point of everything. I'll Phlearn you guys later. Bye everyone. By the way, we're giving away a free pro tutorial in our newsletter this Friday. If you want that pro tutorial, the only way to get it, is to sign up for our newsletter. So do so. There's a link down below and on the sidebar. So there we go. Bye guys.